show that we have for you in the waiting, provided by Creamy Institute and Children's Inspiration. We have an exciting show today. I'm really hopeful that we're going to gain much benefit from this topic today. A topic that's not really discussed about much today in today's society as well. So it's very important that we address this subject. And if you have any questions, then do please email them to info@premier.com, where we can help you further with that. We've got a special guest today, an expert on the subject of domestic violence on BAME children and victims. We have done this in conjunction with Children's Inspiration, and we've got Sara Badr with us today from Children's Inspiration. Hello, Sara.
Hi.
Welcome again to this special exclusive show with yourself. Thank you very much for taking time out to join us.
Thanks.
Sara, before we actually start today, we talked about domestic violence on BAME children and victims. But before we go into that, we really want to just know more about you first. We want to let the community know who is Sara and what is she doing here. So if you could just briefly just tell us about your background in terms of how you got into this and what your current role is, please.
So I trained as I've got my private practice in Beeston in Nottingham, where I work as a counsellor with overall mental health problems. When I was doing my training, I worked with domestic violence and abuse, and I worked with a variety of things, including these, and anxiety and depression, and amongst other things.
So you're an expert on many different areas. That's fantastic. Yes. So we can dip into different things at different times. That's fantastic. Excellent. So to start the episode today, we just want to really ask you, how do you describe the cause of domestic violence on BAME children? What does that mean? Why BAME children?
So the majority of BAME survivors are not employed and have no separate disposable income, and they live in poor housing and lack education and opportunities to progress. This isolation is made all the greater by language and cultural differences, and so they're not as equipped to escape from the abuse. All of the above means that the abuser has more control than ever over their victims. There's also things like they may feel they cannot leave their husband or partner, as they'll be treated as an outcast in the community. Also additional pressures from extended family to stay with that person, or they may be afraid of rejection from the community if they ask for help.
Now, in terms of BAME communities, obviously they've been in the UK for quite some time now. They're not just moved into the UK, so they've been here for a while. But this issue seems like it's still ongoing. It's not really been addressed. Why do you think the BAME community has really been neglected? The services aren't actually provided for them?
I think they're there, but obviously things can be made different. Things can be improved as always, in such as if they report it, then providing them with interpreters, or providing them, it's more an institutional problem, as in the interpreters, and also having women to come and speak to the women that have been abused or domestic violence. I think also, obviously, there needs to be more support and help and education surrounding the cultural values.
So would you say domestic violence is more common in the BAME community than the non-BAME community? Is that a difficult question?
Yeah, very, very much so. Because it's in, it happens to anybody and everybody, it can be anybody, not just BAME community. So it's very hard to put a yes, it does, or no, it doesn't happen more to them, because anybody can be a victim.
Of course. Yeah, and obviously it's not just women, but it can also be men as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
No, that's fantastic. So what would you say are the causes of domestic violence? What arises? I mean, what situation do you have to be in for something like this to come to the surface?
In what sense?
So, for example, like say there's a lot. For example, where we are in Bobsmill Community Centre, we're in the heart of the BAME community. So in terms of the area we live in, there's a lot of high unemployment rates,
Yes.
and so on. So there's a lot of deprivation levels. It's very poor in that area, you would say. So they may feel that they are being neglected. And also the COVID situation doesn't really help in the sense that a lot of families are spending more time together. Hence, these issues are rising more as well. So do you think, be it in a more deprived area or suffering from poverty, in that kind of neighborhood?
Absolutely. And also the pandemic has resulted in further job losses of people being furloughed, resulting in even more reliance on that perpetrator and leaving them vulnerable to that economic abuse, which can be part of the domestic violence. And that also forces them to stay, because where do they go? Where does someone go who doesn't have that income and ability to support themselves?
Yeah, and then there's also that understanding of certain coaches, right? They may feel there's shame in owning up to these kind of situations, so they'd rather keep it hidden rather than telling anybody else.
Yeah.
So there might be a lot more unreported situations like this as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because people are ashamed, or people are worried that they're going to be ostracized from the community. And
yeah. Now, obviously, for someone like yourself, obviously, in terms of the experience you have, do you feel that there's a worry in terms of either the husband or the wife, that if they come out with something like this and go and see a person like yourself, that they feel that information will leak out and it may cause more problem for them? Do you think that's the case? So hence they don't ask for the help?
It can be, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of, I've got a question for you. Why is intimate partner violence currently one of the leading causes of domestic violence?
Right, okay, so intimate partner violence is not one of the leading causes, because intimate partner violence is domestic, but it's just a different term.
Right, okay.
Domestic, yeah. So therefore, it's a different term. It's a different term. It's domestic violence, but it's a different term, and it occurs between people who have been in a close relationship. It can take many forms, including emotional, sexual, and physical abuse, stalking, and threats of abuse. However, it's one of the same. It's actually the same. It's just a different word, just a different term for it.
Okay. So would you say there's a massive impact of something like this on other members of the family? How would they be affected by seeing this kind of action being carried out within the family? Do you think it has a significant impact in their lives?
Absolutely, yes. For many it creates fear. It can destroy family environments and lead to potentially breakups of families. And it creates regular household conflict. And it can also have negative impacts to such things as work, studying, and also leads to physical and mental problems for all involved.
And what about, obviously, one of the things we wanted to touch upon today was in terms of children and their health, really. So what kind of effect do you think domestic violence has on a negative impact on children who may be witnessing something like this?
So it can cause problems in education. Obviously, they may truant as well more, so not be in school more. Also, physical health, and a lot of mental health, psychological factors can come into play, and that's how it can have an impact on their health, as in they become withdrawn, or they've got anxiety, fear. Fear's a big one. Depression, self-blame, feelings of guilt. All these things are all different mental, psychological problems which can have it, in which they can experience the impact it has on children and adults, for that matter.
Now, domestic violence is a term I've heard since I was a child. Nothing's changed in that sense. But growing up here in the UK, I feel that it seems to be on the increase rather than the decrease. Do you think, I mean, I'm not too familiar in terms of the laws in regards to domestic violence here in the UK, but would you say that the laws are being enforced? If they are being enforced, and how come we seem to be seeing a rise in domestic violence?
So if we look at statistics and over the last year or so, it seems that the laws are being enforced. So there's for instance, 758,941 domestic abuse cases were reported in 2020, and that's an increase of 9% from last year. And then 33 arrests per 100 domestic abuse cases in 2020, which is the same as the previous year, and over 5/4 of domestic abuse prosecutions in 2020. That's 78%, which is similar to last year. So potentially they are actually being enforced. However, obviously there's changes that can be made which would help those, which would, they improve and make better regulations. Some of these could be consideration of specific needs of underrepresented groups, and also considering concerns which victims may have in accessing the criminal justice system, such as what I spoke of before, the having translators, having a woman to talk to as opposed to men officers, and also maybe further protection for the survivor. I don't like using the word victim because we generally don't use the word victim anymore. It's survivor. So if I change the word from victim to survivor, that's why, because that's generally not a term we use anymore. So.
Okay, so in terms of when we say you talk about the laws being enforced, so if someone got well, the question is, what kind of sentence are we looking at for someone who gets caught for domestic violence? I mean, is it something that would deter people from committing domestic violence, or is it, oh, you'll be in for a few months and then we'll just release you, you're back into the open again?
Well, I'm not really an expert in law, so okay. I couldn't actually answer that question. I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, the only reason I ask you that is there a deterrence in place, really, that would, protect the survivors from something like this happening to them again? Because it's like, for example, if it's a wife that's been abused or a female partner that's been abused, and she tends to keep it herself because she feels that there's nobody else to turn to. So if the husband or the partner, the male partner, was to go into say prison for a while because of this, then comes back out and just goes back into the home again.
Yes, I understand. I understand that. But I would be hoping that the laws are in place to safeguard those, and what the new law that's come out on domestic abuse earlier this year, hopefully those things have been put in place more to safeguard and to provide that protection.
Now, one thing that's changed for me since growing up here in the UK is the role of media. Now, and specifically in terms of social media, now we've got Snapchat, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, and a lot of people are online, so everyone's got a mobile phone. When I was growing up, no one knew what mobile phone was. We never had anything. When I started university, that's when I actually saw a mobile phone, and they're the big ones where you could only make a call, and that was it. It was black and white screen, Now we've got smartphones, and no matter, even children as young as 5, 6, they've got their own iPhones, So the concern is that, what role does social media play in domestic violence? Because, you can see it everywhere now, whether it's the movies, it's on the phones, like you're on TikTok and then you'll be flicking through and then there'll be a scene of domestic violence. So it's something that it's in your face all the time. Do you think social media plays a big role in domestic violence, would you say?
Yes, I think it does, yes. And I think it's both. I don't think it's just one-sided, though. I think there's positive aspects of it, and there's also the negative aspects. So obviously it includes things such as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and so around the world there's actually almost 3.5 billion people on social media, which is a hell of a lot. So obviously this is why it's a big issue, isn't it? It plays both a positive and negative. If we look at the problems first, some of the problems it creates is it can be used by the perpetrator to retain power on the victim, over the victim, sorry. It's another way of maintaining control over their victims, even if they're in a different location. So obviously they can use GPS now. There's also things like location-based things on features on things like Facebook to even track the victim. And also, you know, if friends tag people in things on Facebook, then obviously it'll be compromised the location then. So all these things are problematic in the case of abuse.
Yeah, I think the positive of social media is also the fact that it's easier to access support services.
Absolutely, I was just coming at I was just
sorry,
going to come onto it.
I'll bit my mouth. I'll pass it back to you. So,
it's all right. Yeah. So basically, the benefit is that, like you said, you can access support a lot easier, and also it brings the survivors together so they can receive support, not from just friends and family, but also people who've experienced similar situations to what they have. And then remember in 2017 there was a hashtag me that was spread through social media.
Yeah.
Hashtag me too. Where thousands of women were telling their stories of abuse. So I think, and obviously that obviously brings other women out to feel they can talk out as well.
So it's a great opportunity where you can actually get group support from people that may not necessarily be close to you, rather than going to a community centre where you have like a group session once a week where you let out your feelings. Now you can have that online support with people you may have never seen before, but it brings that comfort that there is someone else out there who's in the same position yourself, so you can help each other go along as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually as well, it's actually made it easier in some cases for it to be evidenced in court cases, having that media, because it's got as much weight now as other forms of written communication in there. So in that aspect, it's positive as well.
And the fact that we've got more support services available, with like domestic abuse line, or a children's support line, where they can actually call if they see their parents going through a certain situation, or if they're suffering abuse themselves. There's a child hotline where they can actually call in and access these services. So it's fantastic that, or in the good old days, I don't know if that's what you like to call it, but you didn't have these access to this. It was a payphone outside, but nowadays, the ease of access of social media, like I say, you can report situations that you've seen something's happening, and you can get that help just like that.
Yeah, touch of a button.
So there is benefit in technology then?
Yeah, a lot, yeah.
So in terms of technology, what type of technology is available for noticing and reporting domestic violence situations?
So obviously you've got the phones, which is like the obvious one. Websites, apps. So for instance, there's one that's called the Bright Sky app, and it's where anyone can speak about their domestic abuse or somebody who they're worried about. And it's free. It's a free app. Also, there's helplines like Women's Aid, a Refuge's National Domestic Abuse Helpline, Men's Advice Line. All those can be accessed via websites. And there's also, if you can ask the police now to check under the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, and it's known as Clare's Law, so they can check to see the background of people. That's an interesting new technology way.
Fantastic. So going back 50, 60 years, remember here in the UK, women, used to do protests for equal pay, equal rights, and so on. So it wasn't so long ago. Do you think the new rise of feminism has helped or hindered domestic violence progress?
I think it's helped in certain ways, as in it's made women stronger and more confident and more supported and willing to come forward about these things. However, on the other side, we mustn't forget that domestic abuse not only applies to women but also men, and they need to they also must find a voice if more guys are going to come forward about it.
Excellent. So if you go on to, we touched upon media earlier, but if you go into TV, Long time ago. I'm not saying how old I am, but the films were, peaceful. There's a really good storyline to everything, and a lot of them were like love stories and so on. But there was a nice, story to it, and you'd watch it. The whole family could sit down and watch it. But nowadays, for some reason, whenever I'm going to the cinema with my children, there's a lot of violence in each movie. Whether it's good or it's a joke, you tend to see a lot of violence, and especially the same thing in computer games as well. I see my little one, whenever he's got a game on, it's always about fighting, shooting, or something. So something's going on all the time. So do you think the rise of violence in TV may have something to do with the rise in domestic violence rates, statistics, maybe?
I think more research has to be done on it. I don't think there's enough research for us to say, well, it does influence them. It does influence the statistics. However, the exposure to the violence in the films and in the games, like you say, it can desensitize, lead to people to be desensitized. So therefore, it's less shocking when something happens or they're distressed about things. They're less shocked or distressed by things which they would otherwise have been if they hadn't watched those violent movies.
Right. So I've got a question for you. Why don't the victims leave if this sort of happened to them? What's stopping them?
There's many reasons. Some believe that their abusers will change and that they love them. Others have, also the other thing is self-esteem may be low and confidence very low. And also that support might not be in place when they need it. And that's a very big thing. As we spoke about earlier, there's the financial aspect. How are they going to survive? Because the control is always there. The control is always there. And so they've got control. The abuser takes control of the money situation, takes control of the job. So they have no money. They have no way of getting out of it and supporting themselves and supporting the children. And there's also the worry that the child may be taken off them. Children may be taken off them, so they don't say anything in case that is going to happen.
Okay, so how does Domestic Violence Act help empowerment of women?
It helps by detailing the rights and responsibilities of both men and women. It empowers women because for the first time, legal responsibilities, entitlements and support process are clearly and legally defined. So, in other words, like the woolliness and ambiguity has gone. So survivors, authorities and those providing support have now got clear guidance to work with, which wasn't there before.
Okay, and I think maybe there's a lot of mental health issues around this as well, because I was reading a book the other day and it was mentioning that some people tend to hate themselves a lot and they feel that they don't deserve anybody and they don't deserve anything good in their life. So if their partner is treating them bad, they will take it as long as it's only to a certain level. So they'll suffer that abuse, but when it gets to a level where it's more than what they hate themselves, that's when they actually start taking action. I found that strange because obviously I've not been through that, and I hope I don't go through that. But it seemed interesting when I read that, and it said it's a very common thing. Is that something you've experienced through your own research and experience?
Yes, it is quite common.
Okay, so the next question would be: how can a child or a young person who's experiencing domestic violence get the support needed?
Can I just go back to the empowerment of women? It also, because it recognises victims in their own right. So this also helps empowerment of women. And the fact that they can the Act gives them better access to special measures when they're in court. So obviously they've now got protection, and they're not, hopefully, it's going to prevent witness intimidation when they go to court, having those protective measures in place.
And I think there's another benefit of technology is that nowadays you can buy a lot of hidden spy cameras off like Amazon or eBay or something that you can stick around in the house, and they can also be used as evidence. I'm sure they could.
Yes.
Another benefit of living in today's time, then, with that technology that we've got. So just go back to the question I asked you in terms of how can a child or a young person who's experiencing the domestic violence get the support that they need?
I think they can speak to somebody, speak out about it, speak to someone they trust. There's organisations out there which they can go to, speak to somebody like myself as a counsellor, or even a teacher if they trust them, if it's at school. Just speak about it and let somebody know.
So we've touched upon women suffering domestic violence, and we've talked about feminism. What would you say? Because a lot of people think, it's funny because I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and it had Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know about Jordan Peterson from America, but the lady presenter was actually asked him about how men have advantages in today's time, which women don't, or something. But then he was trying to show, hang on a minute, men also suffer at the same time. So my question now would be, can men also experience domestic violence? Because they seem to be the strongest sex, aren't they? So people think, well, surely men can't suffer from it. Is that the case from your experience? Have you seen men suffer from it as well?
Yeah, it happens more than we think, to be honest. But it's hard. It's hard for statistics generally, because obviously it's like anything, you don't know about those who don't come forward or those that don't speak out about it, which obviously tends to be quite a big thing. It's there's still that stigma. Whatever anything, there's still a stigma around it. But a quarter of domestic abuse crimes in 2018-19 were committed against male victims. And I don't know if you're aware of the documentary that was on recently about Alex Gill and his girlfriend. It's called Abused by My Girlfriend. And it was very well documented on BBC Three, I think it was. So more people are speaking about it, and more people, it's becoming more in the media, and they're talking more about it, the guys who it does happen to. I watched there was interesting programme on, and in Lincolnshire in 2019, they reported 2,225 male domestic cases in 1 year.
Wow.
I know, and that's it. You see, you don't hear about these things, and it's hard to comprehend. And in the last 5 years, 62 men were killed by their partners in England and Wales. So it's interesting. Sorry?
It's shocking figures, really. I didn't know.
Yeah, very shocking. Things that so it does happen to men, and men, it is a big thing for both men or women. So.
Okay, so my next question would be, although I know it's really difficult, this is a difficult question, but before getting into a relationship, is there any way of identifying, or maybe it's a sixth sense or something, but any way of seeing signs that there's a potential issue here in terms of there could be domestic violence in that relationship before jumping into a relationship? Is there something that you can pick up on in order to avoid a situation like that, do you think?
Like I was saying earlier, there's always it's called Clare's Law, where you can get them to look into the background of someone, the police. So that's an option. Then obviously other things to look out for is probably controlling behaviour, such as controlling where you go, what you do, who you see, controlling your finances, because it can be just small things, as in it's called coercive control, where it's a repeated pattern of behaviour in controlling just small things that are controlling. So
one thing we want to do as individuals and families is try and live in a better environment, in a much improved neighborhood. That's the goal that we have, so our children can grow up safe in that environment. So as individuals, members of that society, that community that we live in, what we want is to make sure the people around us are safe also, not just our family, but everybody's safe in that environment. We want to look out for each other. I think that's some of the key things that you need to look for in a community. Do people look after each other? Like you see the little signs, neighborhood watch in the community or something like that. That's what we need. Now, as a member of the community, obviously, you don't want to be, eyeing into people's homes or anything like that, or butting into other people's business. But I think it's an obligation upon us as members of that society, that community, where if we feel that there is something going on, we need to try and help that person who we may feel that is affected by domestic violence or other issues. They may not let it out, but indirectly you may see signs on them that something like that is happening, even though they're not opening up. Now, the key thing is, say, for example, for someone like me, I'm in the environment, I go out, I send my children to school. On the way, I see something. Now, how would I know that there may be an issue in our relationship? There may be some sort of domestic violence going on. Is it possible to see signs, or am I just making it up?
Possible to see signs in someone else's relationship.
Yeah, so maybe, you could jump in and maybe report it to somebody like that. I feel that this person's getting abused, or, these children may be suffering. Or, for example, I send my child to school and maybe there's some other children in their class that don't seem to be open. They seem to be upset all the time. Maybe they're seeing something that we don't know. And obviously they're not opening up. They're really quiet. I'm not saying that is a sign, but that may be a sign that there's something happening in that house. Is there anything like this that we as members of the society can see, can identify, and then report it to the appropriate services? Or
because it's about, obviously, in children as well, you can see generally there's signs of neglect or signs of physical signs, bruises, marks, being not quieter than you, but withdrawn, anxious, sometimes difficulty making relationships and maintaining those relationships, as in like interactions with other children.
So in terms of parents, say for example, you see some
fearing is another one, as in feeling fear towards. You can tell that they're withdrawing.
So would you say it would be appropriate for, if I was to see a sign like that or see something, even if I don't know that person, to maybe go up and try and talk to them? Do you think that these are appropriate steps that we should take? Or should we just stay away and say, oh, I've seen it, but I'll just walk away?
Well, it's not. No, because asking if you're okay is not prying as such, is it? It's just asking that, are you okay? Is everything okay? And then obviously if you see things, then it's really difficult, because reporting it and then there's
nothing there.
Yeah. However, if you don't report it, then you feel bad if something does happen. So
yeah, because it's like there's a lot of cases where people commit suicide due to these type of relationships, and obviously that's the last thing you want, because it does have an effect on the community that you live in. That someone commits something like this, you don't know what's happened. You have that fear factor. Coming to the community again, there's a fear factor that what's caused something like this. I thought we were all getting on well. There's no problems. I used to see them, used to smile here and there, but also the next day you hear that they commit suicide, or they slit their wrist or something like that, something crazy like that. So that's what I was wondering, if you think it's appropriate to actually, if you see signs, you're actually butting in, but you're actually trying to get to the source of what may be causing that issue. And I think it's something where you can just gel together. It's an opportunity to actually meet more people as well, isn't it, really?
Yes, and make those connections, which is important, because generally they lose those connections with the abuser being controlling, and sometimes they don't see that they're being abused because they've been cut off from the outside world. They might not see it as abuse. They might see it as that's the norm, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Now, I spoke to a lot of people, and they said that they're really interested in watching today's session because this is a topic that they felt that has not really been discussed and in the community, and especially being in the heart of the BAME community, it's never really been discussed. So it's very important that this information is shared to the members of the community and let them know that there's people out there that are actually, supporting them. The support services out there. It's just you need to just reach out to them, and that's what you're encouraging them to do. So, I mean, if people who may be watching this, maybe someone's watching this is actually suffering from domestic violence and thinking, right, I've listened to it and I feel that, now I know there is support out there. What do I do what can I do now to change my situation? What would you suggest? What would you say? What's the advice you'd give them? So someone wants to take that step forward now and they're saying, right, I'm suffering from this. I can't take this any longer. What can I do to maintain that confidentiality, but also try and seek some support at the same time?
I would say speak to somebody. There's many counsellors like myself out there. With there's different counselling websites that you can find our details on. Also, there's support online, like Women's Aid and different websites. But speaking about things helps, and it's the start to the road to recovery, and doing something to change that situation.
Now, obviously, I know you mentioned you're a counsellor, so it's great to hear, and you're local as well. Can people actually access your support? I say some people are listening and they feel that they can reach out to you. Is there any way of them getting in touch with yourself?
Any way of what, sorry?
Getting in touch with yourself.
There is, yes. I don't know how.
Is there maybe a website or something that they can access that and they can get
there
through
is,
to you?
Yes. Do you want me to send you those details and then?
Yeah, I mean, you can mention it online now. If you got that information to hand, maybe you can just mention it now, and then people can make a note of it, or maybe watch it at a later date. And I will share this link anyway on our social media to make sure that it's spread out to the community and more people can access this information. So if you want to give me the links, that's fine. What we'll do is when we share the clip, we'll also share the links as well so that people can access your services directly.
Excellent. So it's Sara's.therapy. It's sarastherapy.com.
Sarastherapy.com.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So what we'll do is we'll share this as far as wide as possible. I really appreciate you coming on today to give this information. It's something I didn't know much about, even though we've grown up knowing more about domestic violence. I think it's a great opportunity that we managed to get someone like yourself who's got a lot of vast experience in this field to come on and talk to us about this. Hopefully we can get more of you on our channel. Hopefully we can get you more on these mental health issues or domestic violence, has situation changed. But just a quick question, obviously, before we do conclude is, because obviously we've all gone through COVID, it's a global pandemic, everyone's going through COVID at the moment, everyone's struggling. But in terms of domestic violence rates, has the situation changed pre-COVID to during COVID? Has there been a negative or a positive impact, would you say? Because the reason I'm asking this question is because a lot of people are spending more time together. Couples are getting to know themselves a lot more. You know what I'm saying? They're getting to know each other better. So was it a good sign for them, or was it maybe a negative sign? What would you say?
I think it's more of a negative. I think obviously because people are not going out and they've had to, and lockdown has had a huge impact. I mean, one of the first things I actually thought when the first lockdown happened was about this situation and who's going to be left with them constantly, nowhere to go, just nowhere for them to go. They're just stuck there in the same domestic violence situation. And then a few months later, after the first lockdown, I think the commissioners spoke about it, and I thought, well, that's a bit late. I thought about that at the start, but obviously, but I think rates have obviously gone up, no doubt about it, and obviously there's no escape. There was no escape in the first one. I mean, I think they made provisions in the second one where they said you can go and stay at someone else's if that's the situation. But at first she couldn't do that.
So hopefully the situation will ease in a few weeks. Hopefully, if we don't go into another lockdown or extended restrictions. We've actually got a Nottingham Cultural Festival that's happening on Sunday, the 25th of July as well, which the council have given permission to. So hopefully, as long as social distance is maintained, it's going to be the first big event since the lockdown in Nottingham. So it's on the Forest Recreation Ground. So if you do get a chance, do definitely pop down. It'd be great to see you face to face there as well. It'd be fantastic. Do let your friends and family know as well. But once again, thank you very much for taking the time out today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And I'm hoping a lot of people have found this session beneficial. But I just want to say to the people who are viewing this, and maybe the recording after that, if you are interested in finding out more, if you want to email info@creamia.com, then we can pass the information on. Or if you don't know, we can always contact Sara afterwards and maybe get more advice or more help on that, and we can share that information. So hopefully we've got a contact here now in domestic violence that we can build our relationship, get stronger in the future, and hopefully we can work together and make the community, society a better place to live in, hopefully. So thanks again, Sara, for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you very much.
Take care.